The story rewinds to 3 weeks before the wedding, when everything still looked perfect, when love still felt pure, and the air was filled with laughter and promise. In the heart of Lagos, in a warm, bustling neighborhood filled with the sound of vendors and children playing, lived two sisters, Amara and Ngozi. They were close, or at least they used to be. Amara, the eldest, was soft-spoken, thoughtful, and steady, the kind of woman everyone trusted. She worked as a nurse, known for her patience and calm heart. Her beauty was quiet, the kind that shone through kindness rather than appearance. Ngozi, on the other hand, was the opposite: bold, confident, and always the center of attention. She had a laugh that could fill a room, and a charm that made people remember her. Where Amara's light was gentle, Ngozi's burned like fire. Even their mother noticed it. "You two are like day and night," she would often say with a smile. "Amara, you bring peace. Ngozi, you bring energy." But sometimes, that same comparison planted tiny seeds of competition. Ones no one noticed growing. One humid afternoon, as the sisters sat on the porch, Amara's phone rang. It was Tunde, the man who would soon become her groom. Tunde was a successful young businessman with a reputation for kindness and humility. He had met Amara in the hospital after his mother fainted at a charity event. Amara had been the nurse who saved her. That single act of care drew him in. From that day, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He courted her gently, with flowers and respect, never rushing her, always showing gratitude. And now, after months of love and family blessings, they were preparing for their wedding. The days were filled with planning, dress fittings, food tasting, and visits from relatives offering advice. Ngozi helped at every step, her laughter echoing through the house. She seemed genuinely happy for her sister, always volunteering to handle the decorations or help Tunde with guest lists. "Amara," she said one evening, laying out color swatches of gold and ivory, "your wedding will be the talk of the town. Tunde adores you. You're lucky, you know." Amara smiled shyly. "I'm blessed, not lucky," she replied softly. Ngozi laughed again, tossing her braids over her shoulder. "Blessed, lucky, it's the same thing." But later, as Amara turned away, a flicker crossed Ngozi's eyes. A quiet, unreadable shadow. At the traditional family gathering that weekend, both sisters wore matching Ankara outfits. The courtyard was filled with elders giving blessings, women cooking, and drums beating in the distance. Amara looked radiant in her calm grace, while Ngozi, standing beside her, shone in fiery red lipstick and gold jewelry. When Tunde arrived, the crowd cheered. He bowed respectfully to Amara's parents and greeted Ngozi warmly. But the warmth lingered. His smile lasted a second too long. His eyes flickered to Ngozi's face, just a heartbeat more than they should have. Amara didn't notice. Her heart was too full of excitement and gratitude. But Ngozi did, and that night, when she looked into the mirror, something began to change inside her. Days passed, and the wedding plans grew more intense. The living room was always filled with fabric samples, invitation cards, and laughter. But between those laughs, Ngozi's mind started whispering dangerous thoughts. She told herself it was just admiration, that she only envied Amara's peace and stability. But deep down, she wanted more. She wanted the attention. She wanted the love that was being showered on her sister. Sometimes, she would watch Tunde's photos on her phone, zooming in on his smile. "He's such a good man," she whispered one night to herself. "If only I had met him first." Despite the growing shadow in her heart, Ngozi never showed it. She hugged Amara, laughed with her, and played the perfect role of the supportive sister. Their mother, proud and unaware, said one afternoon, "Ngozi, learn from your sister." Her patience brought her happiness. Maybe next year it will be your turn. Ngozi smiled, but inside, the words felt like a burn. She didn't want to wait. She didn't want next year, as the wedding drew closer. Everyone believed it would be a perfect union. A story of love blessed by family and tradition. Guests were already gossiping about how lucky Amara was, how beautiful her ceremony would be, and how Tunde and Amara looked like a match made in heaven. But under the music, laughter, and celebration, something dark and silent began to stir. Jealousy, masked by smiles, growing quietly between two sisters who once shared everything. The calm that once surrounded Amara's world slowly began to shift. What started as excitement and joy began to take on a strange heaviness, one she couldn't explain. The wedding was only 2 weeks away. Every day, deliveries came to the house, boxes of fabric, decorations, and gifts. Everyone seemed happy. Everyone except the one person who was supposed to be happiest of all. Amara smiled often, but something about her sister's energy began to unsettle her. Ngozi, who had once been a cheerful helper, now seemed too involved. "Amara," Ngozi said one afternoon, flipping through a notebook filled with wedding details. "Tunde asked me to help confirm the caterer. He said you were too busy." Amara looked up, a little surprised. "Oh, he didn't tell me that." Ngozi smiled easily. "You know men." He probably forgot. Her laugh sounded light, but Amara noticed a sharpness beneath it, like a knife hidden in silk. In the following days, Ngozi started accompanying Tunde everywhere, to the event planner's office, to meetings with the decorator, even to choose the wedding rings. At first, Amara was thankful. She trusted her sister more than anyone. But then she began to notice the looks. The quiet moments when Tunde and Ngozi would exchange glances that lasted just a little too long. She brushed it off. "You're just being silly," she told herself. "They're planning your wedding. You're imagining things." Still, deep down, her heart began to whisper warnings her mind refused to hear. One evening, Amara returned home earlier than expected. She heard voices in the garden, hushed, tense, and unfamiliar in tone. It was Tunde and Ngozi. She froze by the doorway, her hand trembling as she held onto the wall. "I told you." "We can't do this." Tunde's voice was sharp, anxious. "And I told you," Ngozi hissed. "She doesn't have to know." "Not now." Amara's heart pounded. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to step out, to ask what was happening, but her legs wouldn't move. Then she heard Tunde again. "She's your sister, Ngozi. This isn't right." Ngozi's voice softened. "You think I planned this? You think I wanted to feel this way?" Amara's mind swirled. What way was she talking about? Before she could process more, Tunde walked away, and Ngozi stood alone in the fading evening light. Her eyes glistening, Amara hid, unable to face them, confusion choking her like smoke. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every word replayed in her head. What had they meant? What were they hiding? She wanted to believe it was just a misunderstanding. Tunde had always been honest and loving. Ngozi had always been loyal. But something deep within her, something instinctive, whispered that her world was slowly being rearranged behind her back. A few days later, during a family dinner, Tunde's mother paid a visit. She was a kind but observant woman with eyes that saw beyond smiles. After dinner, she pulled Tunde aside. "My son," she said quietly, "I see things others pretend not to see." Tunde looked uneasy. "Mama, please, not tonight." "I've seen how Ngozi looks at you," she continued firmly. "That woman carries envy in her eyes. Be careful before it poisons your marriage." Tunde sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's nothing, Mama. She's just helping." His mother frowned. "Helping or taking?" He said nothing. He only walked away, pretending her warning was just motherly worry. In the following days, the atmosphere grew colder. Amara noticed Tunde became distant, distracted, answering calls in whispers, stepping out during dinner, giving excuses she didn't question. She wanted to ask, but she feared sounding insecure. Instead, she kept smiling, believing that everything would settle down once the wedding came. But the truth was, the betrayal had already begun. 2 days before the wedding, Ngozi came into Amara's room holding a box. Inside was Amara's wedding gown, a flowing white dress with delicate lace and sparkling beads. "Sister," Ngozi said sweetly, "can I try it on? Just for fun. I want to feel like a bride too." Amara laughed. "You're crazy, Ngozi. What if you tear it?" "Oh, please," Ngozi said, pouting playfully. "Just for a few minutes. I want to see how it looks." Reluctantly, Amara agreed. As Ngozi slipped into the gown, she turned to the mirror and stared at herself for a long moment. The dress fit her perfectly, almost too perfectly. Amara clapped her hands, laughing. "You look beautiful, Ngozi. Maybe your own wedding will be soon." Ngozi smiled, but her reflection in the mirror didn't smile back. Her eyes, instead, were heavy, filled with envy and something darker. As Amara turned to answer a phone call, Ngozi quietly pulled out her phone, took a photo of herself in the gown, and sent it to someone. The message read, "She doesn't deserve him." That night, as Amara slept peacefully, dreaming of her wedding day, Ngozi lay awake, staring at the same photo she had taken. Her heart raced with guilt, but her jealousy drowned it out. She whispered to herself, "It should have been me. It was supposed to be me." The sun rose gently over the city that morning, painting the sky in soft gold. For Amara, it was supposed to be the most beautiful day of her life. The day she would finally become Mrs. Tunde Adewale. Birds sang outside her window, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. The entire house buzzed with excitement. Relatives rushing in and out, makeup artists laughing, children playing with ribbons. Amara sat in front of the mirror, her heart racing. Her white gown shimmered softly under the morning light. She looked at her reflection and smiled, whispering to herself, "Today, everything will be perfect." She had no idea those would be the last words of her piece. In the next room, her sister Ngozi stood silently, already dressed in a beautiful coral gown meant for the bridesmaids. She watched Amara through the slightly open door, her expression blank. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tunde. She read it quickly, her hands trembling. "It's done. Be ready," her breath caught. A mix of excitement and guilt washed over her. She looked into the mirror and whispered, "No turning back now." By late morning, the venue was filled with guests. The hall was stunning, decorated in gold and ivory, the colors Amara had carefully chosen. Family members greeted each other joyfully. Traditional drummers played outside, and photographers were setting up for what everyone believed would be a perfect wedding. The groom was expected any moment, but as the minutes ticked by, whispers began to spread. "Where's Tunde? Is he stuck in traffic? Did something happen?" Amara tried to stay calm, her hands clasped tightly together. "He'll come," she said quietly to her bridesmaid. "Tunde will never disappoint me." But deep inside, a strange uneasiness began to grow, a shadow she couldn't shake off. Half an hour passed, then an hour. The murmurs grew louder. Amara's father frowned, glancing toward the doors. The priest checked his watch again and again. Suddenly, someone shouted from the entrance, "There he is! The groom is here!" Relief washed over the room, but only for a moment. Because when the doors opened and Tunde stepped in, he wasn't alone. He was holding Ngozi's hand. Gasps filled the air like thunder. Every head turned. Ngozi wasn't wearing her bridesmaid dress anymore. She was in a stunning white gown. Amara's gown. Amara froze, unable to breathe. Her eyes widened, disbelief flooding her face. Her mother let out a sharp cry. Guests began murmuring, confusion turning to shock, then outrage. "Tunde?" Amara whispered, stepping forward. "What is this?" Tunde's face was pale, his eyes full of guilt and shame. Yet his voice was steady when he spoke. "I'm sorry, Amara, but I can't marry you. I'm marrying Ngozi." The hall erupted. Amara's father lunged forward, shouting, "You shameless boy! What nonsense are you saying?" But the priest stepped back, horrified, unsure what to do. Ngozi stood beside Tunde, her chin lifted but her hands trembling. She couldn't meet Amara's eyes. The drummers stopped. The music died. The laughter faded. Amara's world collapsed in that single moment. Her knees gave way as she fell to the ground, her veil sliding off her head. Tears streamed down her face, but no sound came out. Her voice was gone. Her heart was gone. Guests began recording on their phones, the betrayal spreading like wildfire before the moment was even over. Her mother screamed, trying to lift her, shouting at Ngozi, "You devil! How could you do this to your own blood?" But Ngozi said nothing. Her lips quivered, her eyes full of conflict, guilt, fear, and pride all tangled together. Tunde tried to take her hand again, but even he looked broken. "Let's go," he muttered. As they turned to leave, Amara finally found her voice, raw and trembling. "Why?" she cried. "You were my sister. Why?" Ngozi turned, tears brimming in her eyes, but no words came out. By evening, the beautiful wedding venue looked like a battlefield. Decorations were torn down, guests were gone, and silence filled the once joyful space. Amara sat alone in the corner, still in her wedding dress, staring blankly at the floor. Her mascara had run down her cheeks. Her hands clutched the edge of her torn veil. The photographers had left, but the videos were already everywhere online. Bride's sister marries groom in shocking twist. Family wedding turns to scandal. Neighbors whispered. Strangers laughed. The internet didn't sleep. Back home, the family house was filled with wailing. Amara's mother fainted twice. Her father locked himself in his room, too ashamed to face anyone. Amara, quiet and broken, sat by her window staring at the night sky. Her heart felt like glass, shattered beyond repair. She whispered to herself, her voice trembling, "I gave them everything, my love, my trust, my family, and they still destroyed me." Tears rolled down her face as she watched the moon disappear behind the clouds. That night, Amara took off her wedding gown and folded it carefully, even though it was torn and stained. She placed it in a box and closed the lid. It was not just a dress anymore. It was the coffin of her dreams. She blew out the candle beside her bed and lay down, her pillow wet with tears, and somewhere, far away, in a hotel room covered with flowers meant for her, Tunde and Ngozi began their life together. A life born out of betrayal, not love. The next morning arrived, but for Amara, the world had lost all color. The sun rose outside her window, but its light felt harsh and cruel, as if mocking her pain. She sat at the edge of her bed, still wearing the silk nightgown her mother had given her for her honeymoon. Her eyes were swollen, her voice gone from crying all night. The laughter, the cheers, the betrayal, it all echoed in her head like a nightmare that refused to end. In the living room, silence hung heavy. Her mother sat motionless, her head tied in a wrapper, her eyes red from weeping. Her father paced back and forth, fists clenched, anger burning through his grief. "How could she?" he muttered for the 100th time. Her own blood, my own child, but Amara's mother said nothing. She just stared at the floor, whispering under her breath, "God, where did I go wrong?" The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends, neighbors, reporters, everyone wanted a statement. The family's name, once respected, had become a scandal overnight. Breaking. Groom marries bride's sister on wedding day. Sister steals groom trends on every social platform. Videos from the ceremony had gone viral. Memes, jokes, and commentary filled the internet. People laughed, shared, and speculated. But no one cared about Amara's shattered heart. 3 days later, Amara finally left her room. Her mother was in the kitchen, boiling tea when she saw her. "Amara," she whispered, rushing over to hug her. But Amara stood still, eyes blank. "Mama," she said softly, "I just need some air." She stepped outside into the compound. The air was thick with humidity. Neighbors peeked through their windows, whispering behind curtains. She ignored them. She walked to the edge of the compound and looked at the street. The same road she and Ngozi used to walk together as little girls, hand in hand. She remembered laughing, sharing secrets, dreaming about their future weddings. Now, those memories burned like fire. Elsewhere, Tunde and Ngozi's new life had already begun. But it wasn't the fairy tale they imagined. The morning after their wedding, Ngozi woke up in the luxurious hotel suite and found Tunde sitting by the window, lost in thought. "You're quiet," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "Do you think what we did was right?" She froze. "We did what we had to do," she replied defensively. "You said you loved me." Tunde sighed heavily. "I said that. But the way it happened, Ngozi, it was cruel." Her eyes narrowed. "Cruel? You're blaming me now?" He looked at her for the first time, and in that gaze, something had changed. The warmth was gone. "You were the one who insisted we couldn't wait," he said coldly. "That we had to marry before anyone could stop us." Ngozi's voice cracked. "Because I was scared you'd change your mind." Tunde turned away. "Maybe I already did." Their marriage began to rot from that very morning. Tunde avoided her eyes. He spent long hours outside, claiming to be busy with work. Ngozi, once proud and confident, began to feel haunted by guilt. At night, she'd wake up in tears, hearing Amara's voice in her dreams, calling her name, asking, "Why?" But when she reached for Tunde, he'd already turned his back. Their love, born from betrayal, was quickly turning into punishment. Meanwhile, Amara tried to rebuild herself. One morning, she visited the church, the same church where her wedding was supposed to happen. The altar was empty, the floor still smelling faintly of roses and perfume. She knelt before the cross, her voice trembling as she prayed, "God, I don't understand why you allowed this, but please, help me survive it." Tears rolled down her cheeks, but there was a strange calm in her heart. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt something like peace. Small, fragile, but real. When she left the church, the priest approached her. "Child," he said gently, "pain never comes without purpose. Sometimes betrayal is the key that opens truth." Amara didn't understand those words yet, but soon she would. Weeks passed. The city's gossip began to fade. A new scandal took over social media, but the damage to Amara's family remained. Her father refused to speak of Ngozi ever again. Her mother secretly sent food to her second daughter's new home, but guilt ate her alive. Then, one afternoon, Amara received an unexpected visitor. Chike, Tunde's best friend. He stood at her door, hesitant, holding an envelope. "Amara," he said softly, "I couldn't stay quiet anymore. You deserve to know the truth." Amara frowned. "What truth?" He looked around, lowering his voice. Tunde didn't marry Ngozi for love. He was being blackmailed. Amara's eyes widened. Blackmailed? By who? Chiki took a deep breath. "By Ngozi." He handed her the envelope. Inside were printed messages, screenshots, and photographs. Evidence of a secret that shattered everything Amara thought she knew. Ngozi had discovered something dark about Tunde's past. something that could ruin his career and reputation. She'd used it to force him to choose her over Amara. Tunde had tried to resist, but in the end, fear won. Amara stared at the evidence, her hands trembling. Her heart raced. Anger, confusion, pity, and sorrow twisting inside her all at once. So that was the truth. Her sister hadn't just stolen her groom, she had trapped him. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, clutching the envelope. The truth was like a double-edged sword. It hurt, but it also freed her. She whispered, "So it wasn't love. It was a lie." She looked out at the dark sky, a new determination rising in her eyes. "I won't be their victim anymore." The sun had barely risen when Amara walked out of her house, clutching the envelope to her chest. The streets were quiet, but inside her, a storm had begun to rage. One made of anger, truth, and awakening. She had spent the entire night reading and rereading the evidence Chike had given her. Every message, every threat, every cruel manipulation her sister had used. She wasn't the foolish girl crying over a stolen groom anymore. She was a woman now, one who had been betrayed, but not broken. The weight of the truth Amara sat in a small cafe later that morning, staring at her reflection in the window. Her face was thinner, her eyes darker, but there was fire behind them. Chike joined her quietly. He looked around nervously before speaking. "Are you sure you're ready to face this?" Amara nodded. "I've been living in the dark for too long, Chike. I want to know everything." He leaned closer. After the wedding, Tunde was miserable. He didn't want to go through with it, but Ngozi threatened him. She had photos, messages, proof of a scandal that could destroy his political career. "Something from years ago, before he met you." Amara frowned. "What kind of scandal?" Chike hesitated. He was involved in a corruption deal with his uncle, embezzled funds meant for a youth project. Ngozi found the documents and blackmailed him into marrying her. Amara's hands trembled. Her sister had used blackmail to destroy her life, and had married a man who didn't even love her. Ngozi's guilt that same night. Miles away, Ngozi sat alone in her living room. The house was beautiful. Marble floors, chandeliers, designer furniture, but it felt like a cage. Tunde had moved into the guest room weeks ago. He rarely spoke to her except for short, cold sentences. Every evening, she poured herself a glass of wine and scrolled through social media, deleting every hateful comment, every reminder of the scandal. She had everything she thought she wanted. Wealth, a husband, status, yet she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amara's face on that wedding day. The shock, the tears, the silence, and sometimes, in her dreams, she heard her sister's voice whispering, "You stole my joy, Ngozi, but you'll never enjoy it." One morning, Ngozi entered the living room to find Tunde's laptop open. She was about to close it when a message popped up. From Chike. She knows Tunde. Amara knows everything. Ngozi froze. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook as she whispered, "No, no, this can't be happening." She slammed the laptop shut, her mind spinning. If Amara had the truth, it was only a matter of time before everyone else did. And once that truth came out, she would lose everything. The confrontation. 3 days later, Amara decided to face them. She dressed in a simple cream blouse and black trousers, calm, composed, dignified. No makeup, no tears, just truth. When she arrived at Tunde and Ngozi's house, the security guard almost dropped his phone in shock. "Madam Amara?" he stammered. You want to go in?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Tell them I'm here." Inside, Ngozi was in the kitchen when she heard the guard's voice. Her glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "Amara," she whispered. Moments later, Amara stood in the doorway. Their eyes met. Two sisters bound by blood. divided by betrayal. The silence was suffocating. Ngozi tried to smile, but her lips quivered. You shouldn't be here." Amara stepped closer, her voice low and calm. "Why not? You already took everything else from me." Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. "Amara, please. I didn't mean for it to happen this way." Amara laid the envelope on the table between them. "I know what you did. I know about the blackmail." Ngozi's body went rigid. "Who told you?" "It doesn't matter," Amara said. "You didn't steal Tunde because you loved him. You trapped him. You destroyed my life, and his." Tears rolled down Ngozi's cheeks. "You don't understand. I loved him first. Before he met you, he promised me he'd come back. But when he chose you, I lost everything. I couldn't let him go." Amara's eyes softened with disbelief. "So you ruined me for revenge?" Ngozi sobbed. "I just wanted what was mine." Amara shook her head slowly. "No, Ngozi. You wanted what wasn't yours, and now it's destroying you." Tunde entered the room just then, hearing the raised voices. His face went pale when he saw Amara. "Amara," he began, his voice trembling. She turned to him. "I don't hate you, Tunde. You were weak, not wicked. But I deserve the truth, from both of you." He looked down, guilt written all over his face. "She's telling the truth," he said softly. "Ngozi forced me. I was scared. I didn't want to lose my career." Ngozi screamed, "Don't blame me! You could have said no." Tunde looked up at her, his voice cold and final. "I already said no once. You just didn't care." He turned to Amara. "I'm sorry. You were the only one I ever truly loved." Amara's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "You don't get to say that now." The beginning of the end. Amara left the house in silence. Ngozi fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching at Tunde's leg. But he pulled away. From that day, their marriage crumbled completely. Tunde filed for separation, and word began to spread. The same internet that once mocked Amara now whispered about Ngozi's lies and the stolen wedding scandal. Within weeks, Tunde's secret corruption case leaked, and it was Ngozi's name that appeared in the reports as the source of blackmail. She became a public disgrace. Friends abandoned her. Clients withdrew. Even her own parents refused to take her calls. Meanwhile, Amara began to heal. She volunteered at a local youth center, helping young girls who had suffered emotional abuse. Her quiet strength inspired others. One evening, as the sun set over the city, she stood by the window of her small new apartment, watching the orange light fade into the horizon. For the first time in months, she smiled. A small, honest smile. She whispered, "I forgive you, Ngozi. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." The months that followed were quiet, almost painfully quiet. The noise of gossip had faded, but its echo still lived in the hearts it broke. For Amara, silence had become her greatest teacher. She no longer flinched when she saw wedding photos on social media. She no longer cried at night. The wound was still there, but it had become a scar, not a sore. And as the world moved on, the pieces of her heart began to fit back together. Differently, but stronger than before. Tunde's fall news spread like wildfire. Tunde had been arrested for fraud and corruption, the very scandal Ngozi once used to trap him. His company was seized by authorities, and every luxury he had flaunted now became evidence against him. Amara saw it on the evening news one night, his once proud face now pale and tired, being led away in handcuffs. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply whispered, "We all pay for the truth we hide." Ngozi's ruin, meanwhile, Ngozi's world had fallen apart completely. After Tunde's arrest, the mansion was seized by the bank. Her friends, the ones who once cheered her lavish life, stopped answering her calls. She moved back into a small rented room, selling her jewelry to survive. The glamorous woman who once strutted through life now avoided mirrors. Each morning, she stared at her reflection, seeing a stranger, one with tired eyes and guilt written across her face. Her parents refused to speak to her. Her father had said coldly the last time they met, "You didn't just shame your sister, you shamed us all." But deep down, beneath the pride and pain, Ngozi missed one thing more than anything else: her sister. A knock at the door one rainy afternoon. Amara sat in her living room, reading. There was a knock at the door. When she opened it, she froze. Ngozi stood there, drenched, shivering, and visibly broken. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her clothes soaked. For a moment, neither sister spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence. Finally, Ngozi's voice trembled. "Amara, I didn't know where else to go." Amara's heart tightened. Memories of betrayal, humiliation, and pain rushed back. Yet so did the memories of childhood laughter, shared secrets, and sisterhood. She stepped aside quietly. "Come in." The confession Ngozi sat at the edge of the couch, her hands trembling. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "Tunde is in prison. The house is gone. People spit when they see me. I don't even have my name anymore." Tears streamed down her face. "But the worst part isn't losing them. It's losing you." Amara looked at her silently, pain and compassion battling inside her. Ngozi continued, voice breaking. "I thought taking him would make me feel powerful, but it only made me empty. Every night, I see your face. That day, the hurt in your eyes. I stole your happiness because I thought it would give me mine." She buried her face in her hands. "I was wrong, Amara. I was so wrong. I'm sorry. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I had to say it." Amara's eyes filled with tears. She walked slowly to her sister and knelt in front of her. Her voice was soft, steady. "You didn't just steal my groom, Ngozi. You stole your own peace." Ngozi sobbed harder. "Please, please forgive me." Amara took a deep breath. "I already did." Ngozi looked up in shock. Amara continued, her voice trembling but sure. "I forgave you the day I realized hate was only chaining me to you. You took something precious from me, but you also taught me what strength truly means. I won't carry this pain any longer." Forgiveness and freedom. The two sisters sat there crying, not as enemies, not as rivals, but as two broken souls finding their way back to peace. After a long silence, Amara stood and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. A soft golden light broke through the clouds. She turned to Ngozi and smiled faintly. "Stay here tonight. You need rest." Ngozi nodded silently, overwhelmed with relief. For the first time in years, they shared a quiet dinner. Simple food, no luxury, no lies, just peace. A new beginning weeks later. Amara stood in front of a small crowd of women in a community center. A banner behind her read, "The Healing Heart Foundation, helping women rise after betrayal." Amara spoke with quiet strength. "I once believed that forgiveness was weakness, but now I know forgiveness is the greatest freedom. When you forgive, you don't excuse the pain. You simply refuse to let it rule your life." Applause filled the room. Ngozi stood at the back, eyes filled with tears, proud, humbled, and healing. Final scene. That evening, Amara walked alone through the garden outside the center. The sun was setting, painting the sky with gold and crimson. She paused, closed her eyes, and whispered to the wind, "Some truths break you before they set you free. But in that freedom, you find yourself again." A peaceful smile spread across her face. The past no longer held her captive. She had found something greater than revenge. She had found herself.